Paul Brunton answers life's perennial questions. Why is there evil and suffering? Quest Series 2, video number 12. Presented by the Paul Brunton Philosophic Foundation. The power out of which all things and all entities come is a beneficent one. Love is its radiation. There is no evil and no pain in it. They begin only on the lower levels of separation and differentiation. What may be true on the ultimate level, the non-existence of evil, the reality of the good, the true, the beautiful, becomes false on the level of duality. Here the twofold powers, the opposites, do exist, do hold the world in their sway. To deny relative evil here is to confuse different planes of being. Struggle exists in the world because of the world's diversity, because life has been fragmented into innumerable creatures who are all struggling blindly in the endeavor to attain some want. For when, in the course of its natural evolution, the conscious being came to distinguish itself from others and recognized its separateness, its power of free choice awakened, and the possibility of discord with other beings was introduced. Such a moment was a tremendous turning point in its consciousness. Its karma as an individual began to generate. Hence we read in Genesis, "And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is to know good and evil." The Overself, our soul, had to leave us free to pursue paths of wickedness rather than compel us to pursue paths of righteousness. The first was alterable through suffering into permanent and profound goodness, while the second could produce only a worthless, robot-like superficial and ephemeral goodness. If it be true that the moment humans dissociate themselves from the Overself, evil is born, then the only radical cure for it is their reassociation once again with the ever-waiting source. The divine hunger to get out of this dissociation discloses itself in the hungers of a lower level, which so palely and sometimes so ignobly reflect it. One may not, and usually does not know it, but in every quest of amusement, where humans seek to forget their cares and miseries, they seek to forget themselves, in fact, and thus to transcend themselves. They hunt for wealth, look for love, and try to climb the ephemeral eminence of fame, when all the while they are really seeking the real. For its attainment confers a wealth which can never be lost, and a love which lasts forever. While the mind remains so fixed in its own personal affairs, be they little or large, it has no chance to open up its higher levels. When attention and emotion are kept so confined, the chance they offer of this higher use is missed. The peace, truth, and goodness which could be had are untouched. When the ego discovers that it is part of the whole, it will naturally cease to live only for its own good and begin to live for the general good also. What are the blockages which prevent the soul's light, grace, peace, love, and healing from reaching us? We are intruding our personality and imposing our ideas all the time. If we would stop this endless aggression and be inwardly still a while, we would be able to hear and receive what the soul has to say and to give us. The Overself is the voice of our intuition. It guides and illuminates intellect, balances and restrains the ego, and that which the wise men call true intelligence rises. Thus, evil arises only when an entity goes astray into the delusions of separateness and materialism, and thence into conflict with other entities. There is no ultimate and eternal principle of evil, but there are forces of evil, unseen entities who have gone so far astray and are so powerful in themselves that they work against goodness, truth, and justice. But by their very nature, such entities are doomed to eventual destruction, and even their work of opposition is utilized for good in the end and becomes the resistance against which evolution tests its own achievements, the grindstone against which it sharpens our intelligence, the mirror in which it shows us our flaws. Suffering is not always an evil. It is often educative. And if we keep awake to the static reality whilst in the midst of the earthly dream, the whole world becomes merely a school for educating consciousness. Then suffering, evil, and the like are transient aspects leaving permanent results. He who learns must suffer, and even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon our heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. Greek playwright Aeschylus. Grace is a powerful stimulus. It descends from a higher source, urges us to perfect our nature, equips us to complete it. Thus we are lifted up to its own higher level. Many who ask for grace would be shocked to hear that the troubles which may have followed their request were actually the very form in which the higher power granted the grace to them. Indeed, the hour may come when, purified from the ego's partiality, you will see that it was a gift from loving hands, not a curse from evil lips. You will see, too, that in your former insistence on clinging to a lower standpoint, there was no other way of arousing you to the need and value of a higher one than the way of unloosed suffering. But at last the wound has healed perfectly, leaving you, as a scar of remembrance, greatly increased in wisdom. The highest goal of the quest is not illumination gained by destruction of the ego, but rather by perfection of the ego. It is the function of egoism which is to be destroyed, not that which functions. The ego's rulership is to go, not the ego itself. The swiftest horse that bears us to perfection is suffering. Meister Eckhart. Whenever you read in history of religious martyrs who were filled with supernatural serenity in the midst of terrible torture, be sure that they were supported by the Overself. The consciousness of their divine soul had, by its grace, become stronger than the consciousness of their earthly body. There is indeed a secret kingdom of heaven where our finest and fairest hopes may find genuine realization. Evolution is moving us all towards this grand goal, perfecting us through the very pains and errors which are temporarily inseparable from a certain stage of existence. This is our glorious destiny, and nothing less nor lower shall be able to hold us in the end. Salvation is for all. Paul Brunton, 1898 to 1981, a best-selling British author of a dozen books, spent much of his early life researching the original sacred teachings of Western and Eastern spiritual traditions. He traveled the world to discover and communicate with Christian, Kabbalistic, Vedantic, Buddhist, Taoist, indigenous, and Sufi masters. Blending the richness of his own spiritual experience and inquiry with these ancient and contemporary teachings, he developed a philosophy and path of practice that suits life in the 21st century, one that expresses the greatest wisdom and love available to humankind. Regardless of how it is named, we each have a divine soul, an overself or higher self, that is with us here and now, waiting to be realized. Paul Brunton's writings are a source of deep spiritual guidance for all those interested in living a divinely inspired life. Anthony Damiani, 1922 to 1984, was a prominent teacher of Paul Brunton's ideas and founder of the Wisdom's Goldenrod Center for Philosophic Studies. Inspired to penetrate into and understand the depths of traditional wisdom, he taught classes on the major philosophies as well as the teachings of Paul Brunton. His dedicated students compiled the 16 volumes of Paul Brunton's posthumous writings, titled The Notebooks of Paul Brunton, available from www.larsonpublications.com. Material for this video is taken from Paul Brunton's The Wisdom of the Overself, Hidden Teaching Beyond Yoga, his notebooks, Volume 6, The Ego from Birth to Rebirth, 7, Healing of the Self, The Negatives, 12, The Religious Urge, Reverential Life, 14, Inspiration and the Overself, and 16, Enlightened Mind, Divine Mind, as well as Anthony Damiani's Looking into Mind. When completed, the Paul Brunton Quest Series 1 and 2 will contain the following topics. Please subscribe to the Paul Brunton Philosophic Foundation channel.